welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. So today what we'd like to do is to give you an overview of what reference architecture is all about, how it came about, and how it is being used. And to help me out in this session, I will have Karthik from Lufthansa Group joining me, Najmi from Emirates Group, who's also going to join, and he also happens to be Vice Chair of Architecture and Technology Strategy Board. So right at the right at where the action happens in terms of standards. And I'll have my IATA colleague Inut join us as well as a head of industry architecture and standards on the distribution side. So the flow for today is that we're going to go into a bit of a background as to what reference architecture is and how it came about. Then we will have a roundtable with my colleagues here to kind of talk about real-time usage of these of reference architecture and how it plays in the standard scene. Then what we'll do is we'll go over the end-to-end overview of what this architecture is all about. We won't have time to get into all of the nitty-gritty details of it, but the intention today is to give you the overall visibility so that you know where to look for maybe some of the parts of it which are mostly interesting to you as depending on which part of the airline you work with, right? So you can just go on the next slide and to get into the a bit of a context. Many of you would probably be familiar with modern airline retailing program, and you must have seen this house, or many of you must have seen this house before. So it's really to remind everybody of what scope of modern airline retailing is. So now if we could just do 3 clicks. Now we're looking at the end-to-end scope of MAR, and that includes sub-capabilities under digital identity. And if you can just click here without getting into all of the details around it, that's just to show you what constitutes a part of MAR scope. We're looking at selling with offers. That also includes 3 sub-capability pillars that talk about product and partnership management, offer channel management, and payment management. And then finally, we're looking at fulfilling with orders. That entails order management, order accounting, and financial management in a broader sense, as well as delivery with orders. Now, this is the end-to-end scope from an airline perspective. However, there are some other pillars that constitute MAR program. Now, if we just do another click, now we're looking at clearly a pillar around standards development to ensure that we've got enough, that we've got standards to support all of those capability pillars that we have included under MAR. We have a certain set of activities under transition and acceleration, where we work with the industry to help with moving towards the airline retailing environment to offers and orders. One of the key activities there is the work that is being done by consortium. And you'll see how consortium also fits in with us producing, or the industry producing, reference architecture. And then, of course, as with any program, then we have a underlining pillar that supports our communication and advocacy activities around the program. So this is the end-to-end scope. And now, just to get into a bit more details of the background of reference architecture, if we do another click, then another, yeah. So this is how it looks. See much on this particular picture, but trust me, we will get into the details of each of the boxes that is identified here. But this is just to give you an idea of how it came about and how the industry came with this. Now, the initial version of this reference architecture was devised by the Airlines Consortium back in the early 2023. Now, from there on, as consortium worked on this architecture, then at some point it was actually contributed by Swiss airline to Passenger Standards Conference to be used as the baseline for the industry to accept it as an industry artifact. Now, since then, this reference architecture was open for industry review and comments and consultation. And as a result of it, with some of the additional comments and some of the additional enhancements, it came out as version 1.5 under the management of architecture and technology. Now, From there on, it actually went into airlines voting process on their passenger services conference and ultimately voted as a recommended practice 1786. And that was back at the very end of last year. So as it stands today, this reference architecture now represents a part of the IATA standards portfolio, and it's fully owned by the industry and is fully under the industry change management with passenger standards conference, and more specifically with architecture and technology standards boards that is hands-on responsible for maintaining this reference architecture. So this is how it came about. So it is a piece of work which is a collaboration across multiple airlines that have initially donated some of the work that they've done as a part of their retailing journeys into the consortium, and then from consortium again as an industry collaboration already under the provisions of passenger services conference. Now, one thing from a background perspective is also to perhaps have a few words around how this reference architecture or capabilities mapping connects the dots across different standards pillars. And with this, if you just click on yes, that's good. Now, as you see here, it's the same house that we talked about, which is a part of MAR scope. We got digital identity, we got selling with offers, and fulfilling with orders. Now, within those domains, then we already have a whole stack of standards that we maintain, and well, you have standards under digital identity that were developed and voted. You have standards under selling with offers that I suppose many of you would probably be more familiar with, because here we're talking about NDC that's been talked about for quite a number of years now, and it's a part of Resolution 787. And what was also recently voted, and I apologize for a slight mistake on the slide. It's a recommended practice 1730, which is about product management. It says here on the slide it's already approved. So it's in place. Then you have fulfilling with orders that consists of two parts. There is one part which is about simplified distribution, and that more generally is known as one order. And again, some of you might be more familiar with it already, because it's been around as initial work that was done on it back in 2016, 2017, I believe, under the provisions of Resolution 787. And there's been quite a lot of work that's been ongoing around the actual data interchange standard or the schemas to support it. More recently, what was added into simplified distribution pillar is recommended practice 1780, which is a supplier retailer agreement framework that is there to support interline and more broadly partnership relationships between airlines and their partners. And finally, we have a pillar under simplified settlement, where we maintain a standard called settlement with orders, and that is a native way for airlines to settle orders either with travel trade in view of intermediated sales, or with interline and other partners, and that is a part of work which is underway now under the Settlement and Accounting Standards Board that is looking at ensuring that SWO standard can be used for interline settlements as well. And this is where reference architecture comes in. As you'd see, it's something that connects the dots across all of the pillars that are identified here, and it works, or it acts as a it acts to connect different standards together. It acts to represent interdependencies and interoperability requirements across these different pillars, because it actually identifies all of the capabilities that go along from digital identity all the way through selling, through fulfilling, and down to settlement and financial management. This is why this reference architecture is identified as a transversal sort of standard, or rather recommended practice, that is there to demonstrate the end-to-end requirement for capabilities for airlines to have, and it serves for both airlines and partners as a way to make sure that all of the capabilities that are required to support retailing are actually looked at and somehow tied in with the standards that with the standards that we need to develop. So this is by way of background, and this is to give you an idea of where does it fit and how does it connect the dots. Now, with this, what I'd like to do is to move into the next section of this webinar, and I'd like to call my colleagues, Karthik, Najmi, Inut, on stage, or online rather, so that we can have a discussion. So guys, if you could just maybe briefly introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into the discussion.
So my name is Karthik Vedapuri. So I'm the head of order management IT for Lufthansa Group. Currently, we are doing this offer and order transformation program, and I'm also having a dual role as a technical program lead for this 100% offers and orders transformation program. I have a couple of decades of experience in airline IT and have multiple roles in solution architecture and enterprise architecture. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, I am Najmi Mansoor. I represent architecture practice within Emirates Group. So I have a lot of interest in PSS, a lot of experience in PSS technologies, capabilities, business processes. And I also represent IATA ATSB as a vice chair and interest with the modern airline retailing. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm next. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Janus Bada, and I'm here with my colleague Andre, representing industry architecture and standards, and I deal with commercial airline distribution. So this covers traditional distribution standards such as reservations, pricing, and ticketing, mileage, and currency conversion. But also the retailing standards or offers and orders, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So from here on, I guess I would turn to Karthik, and I would maybe Karthik, it would be interesting if you would tell the audience from your experiences from the consortium time and around how this architecture came about in a bit more details, and then maybe also see where and how it's being used, not just by individual airline, but then also as a part of other maybe artifacts that are produced for acceleration and engagement purposes, using this as a baseline.
Sure, thank you. So in the beginning, IATA collected input from like real-life implementation projects from the consortium airlines, many of which who have already started preparation or have done similar retailing experiences with NDC and other offer areas. And additionally, we also gathered some ideas and also inspiration from other industries, for example, retailing or with telecom, who have also similar challenges and have successfully mastered it. And in the end, all the input was anonymized, normalized, and also generalized by the IATA architecture team to produce a common view for the whole industry. In the end, the output was really based on real-life examples, some of them successfully used by other industries. And it is, if I would use the keywords, open, modular, and business capability-based architecture. Right, so that's how this was formed. And to really go on how is this used, I would rather say this reference architecture forms as a foundation for every other work and also for every other standards that comes up. So for example, from the consortium, we had a work stream on IT transition, which was creating this IT provider readiness about the transition and also the airline transition pathways. And this was referring to individual modules, which are described in the reference architecture. And this reference architecture gives us something common for all the airlines and also for other providers as a common reference point. So that when we talk offers or like something specific in terms of order integrity, everybody knows what is meant and what is the capability behind this.
So, so Karthik, now you're saying that it was used as a part of the work that was done on IT readiness readiness guide. Now, would it be true to say that system providers have also had their opportunity to contribute and to review and to sort of have their views expressed around this architecture?
Yes, correct. So during this IT transition workstream, we had also individual sessions with the providers, and the providers were also reviewing their the documents, the architecture, and also look at what is missing from their perspective, or is there any other enhancements. So we also collected the feedback, and this is not just from the providers. Also, this was presented to the airlines. So multiple, let's say, points of view and different feedback were collected to bring it to the form where it is now.
And it is my understanding also that this reference architecture was used to support the work done on procurement guidelines around offers and orders, sort of serving as a common baseline. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Well,
the idea is that
we talked a little bit.
Like a comment of input.
No. So, so we talked a little bit about the origins of it, but now that it's a part of the industry standards portfolio, so maybe Najmi, a question to you: how do you see it evolving under the management of Architecture and Technology Strategy Board? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so thank you. So I mean, as we all know that global interoperability and exchange of information is a must for the aviation community. And the standards which we develop here enables interoperability and which actually provide global airline industry to connect, right? So with the same concept, right? PSC standards perspective, the change management of the standards, which we have a robust process in place, which actually ensure that the consistent releases of the changes, if there are any, based upon the business requirement on to the capabilities of airline retailing business reference architecture is maintained and released. So we adhere to our practices which we have, and we continuously engage with the business boards for any evolvement in terms of capabilities and the functionalities between these main themes and pillars, right? So based on that, we will use our expertise and release the versions which are necessary for point in time, or as per the roadmap of standards which we have maintained as per the AIDM data models. So I think that's the overall take from the ATSG perspective.
Najmi, if I may, can you also give us a little bit of a view of how Emirates, if Emirates is using this business reference architecture internally, of course, whatever you can share that it's in the public domain.
Yeah, so from the technology perspective, we have looked into the what are the capabilities we can build, and there are some initial interest in these airline reference architecture, and it has been seen, and then people here within the IT and in business also, they were trying to understand that what does it mean to the airline, right? So of course it's an initial stage, and there are no yes and no, but of course there are interest to understand that where industry is going, and then what are the capabilities we need to mature, and what are the capabilities we can reuse in terms of delivering the capabilities and functionalities which are essential to release the modern airline retailing.
Yeah, I think actually it puts both Kartik yourself and Nashmi yourself into quite an interesting position, because you're looking at it internally from your airline's perspective, but at the same time you're kind of wearing an industry hat, whether under the consortium or under PSC, where you kind of have to maybe step back and look at it more from an overall perspective. Would that be a fair assessment of a duality of your roles?
Yeah, absolutely right, Andrew. Yeah. So that dual role actually help in both the ways. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree as well. However, if you really look at the reference architecture, it is more generic. And if you compare it with similar levels of reference architecture in other industries like e-commerce, you would see a lot of similarities. So I would rather say it's much more easier to understand, and there is not that much of a difference, I would say.
Yeah, and I suppose it would also be fair to say that when airlines had worked on it and kind of enhanced it, the whole idea was to stick with being as generic and as e-commerce as possible, as opposed to staying within the constraints of specificities of the airline distribution as we know it today. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct. If you really want to go to customer-centric processes, I mean, in the end, you have to look at how successful businesses have done this in other industries, and then you can try to like get the best ideas and implement them.
Interesting. Now, I have a question for Inut, because Inut, in addition to you being a head of architecture for distribution and standards, you actually hands-on involved in being a secretary for Shop Order Pay business board. Now, how do you see this is helping you to work with the airlines to kind of corral them around developing standards in your particular area?
Thank you, Andre. Yes, indeed, as you mentioned, I'm a secretary of Shop Order Pay, and we're looking at using this from different angles, actually. As you mentioned, it was recently adopted as a standard, and we're still at the beginning of the process, but we're looking at the industry level to map the capabilities that we'll see shortly in a little bit more detail to an end-to-end use case scenario. So a scenario in which all of the potential different use cases can be mapped to the capabilities that underpin or support the delivery of that particular use case. So that's one, but we're also considering and looking at, depending on the industry's endorsement, to embed the references to the architecture within the standard setting process. So what does that actually mean? Any new change request that would come in would need to identify either an existing capability in the reference architecture, or if there's none that is mappable, propose the creation of a new one. Because as we will see a little bit later, there are considerations for future development, and there have been assumptions done for the future, for expanding it. So embedding it within standard setting and within change management is something that we're considering, and that would also ensure the evolution of this architecture and the fact that it would be kept up to date with the latest functionalities being worked upon by the standard setting groups. Last but not least, it's also a means to identify interdependencies across the different groups. So I'm running a Shop Order Pay, but we have other standards boards looking at different domains. So this is also a way to identify the interdependencies. I'm also aware that some of the work with the business reference architecture is being done within IATA's advisory councils. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Andre, you can provide a little bit of details on how that works.
Yeah, sure. I mean, clearly there is a lot of work that is going on the standard side with the standards conference. but there's also some work on sort of identifying processes at a higher level that is happening within advisory councils, which is a different governance arm of IATA. And well, to give you an example here is that we're doing a lot of work under the umbrella of Industry Financial Advisory Council that had taken this reference architecture as a starting point and have gone into next level of detailing capabilities within financial management pillar. So we actually have gone into a lot more details vis-a-vis the initial version of the architecture. Now this work is still underway. It's not in the standards domain at this point because this is just it was just the beginning, and this was really more on the process level and capabilities identification. But what we're looking to do as one of the next steps is one of the airlines that participates in the advisory council would donate it within the standards environment, as was initially done with the architecture, to see how we can evolve it also, or how the industry can evolve it as a part of its standards portfolio, as a part of this recommended practice. So we've gone into further detailing using the same approach as was or the same methodology that was done for the overall architecture, which is to stay as close to standard out-of-the-box retailing practices that you'd see in other industries or in other domains, and kind of see where and how that we can move away from some of the complexities that we run today as a part of overall financial management. So that's the area that we've been looking at. So it's really moving from complexities of things like classic revenue accounting into order accounting that is already quite well known and worked out in many other industries. So it's sticking around with your traditional order to cash and procure to pay processes. Again, this is something that you'd be finding out more in the coming week, well, probably in the coming months, as this work is matured and packaged to be donated to the standards umbrella. So there are multiple uses of this reference architecture across different governance groups, as well as, I suppose, airlines themselves. Yeah. No, thank you. Actually, I think that was a good question because yeah, it's not just one part; it's multiple parts that are being addressed. Look, and now turning back to Karthik and then to Najmi, maybe before we move on into actually telling you what this architecture entails, I mean, maybe any messages you want to give to your fellow participating airlines and well, system providers or whoever's on the call in terms of making better use of this reference architecture in their planning retailing journeys. So maybe starting with Karthik and then move on to Najmi.
I would say that the airlines should take the opportunity and use the business reference architecture. I mean, as we said, more and more standards will be based on this, and this will be the foundation of many other discussion items as well. So understanding this conceptually would give airlines a better way to also be more successful and also contribute better towards the standards. And also, airline retailing is a journey. It's not a simple journey, but the rewards would be, let's say, quite big as well. And then this reference architecture could be a very successful and very useful tool to use in this journey for retailing transformation. And each airline can have a different maturity on different capabilities, and also depending on strategy, their IT landscape or their provider selection criteria. There could be different priorities, but in the end, the reference architecture is purely a business capability model, and this would help them make better decisions and also guide them in this journey going forward.
Yes, certainly. I think I will build upon Karthik's comment. It's basically a business transformation, business-led transformation into the retailing world, right? It's not the technology-driven transformation. So the reference architecture is actually gives you a framework which helped you to understand that if you want to transition into a retailing world, what kind of capabilities you would need to consider. And it's not that the entire capabilities should be mapped, but there has to be some capabilities which require more focus, like moving away from PNR based order to the non-PNR based order. I think these kind of things which needs to consider before deciding going into a transformation from traditional into the new world, right? Basically, the airline can use it as a rule book to come back and refer, and then try to build their own journey on top of it. So it's a good rule book, or it's a good playbook, I would say, to just give some sort of sense into if airline wants to transition into the airline world, what are the capabilities, functionalities, and interactions are needed in the industry.
Excellent, thank you. So with this, what I'd like to do is to jump right into looking at different capabilities that are included within this reference architecture. But before I do that, what I'd like to do is to just remind everybody that this is an industry artifact, and all of you have a say in how it's going to evolve based on your knowledge, based on your understanding, and based on your needs. So by all means, this is also an engagement call, as in, if you wish to participate into any of the standard setting activities in evolving this reference architecture, then you're more than welcome. And actually, we need everybody's support and everybody's help, because it's only by doing it collectively across multiple airlines and providers together that we can come with something meaningful and useful. And the more participation that we have, then the more maturity that we can achieve on this particular artifact, as well as on the stack of standards that are maintained under Passenger Services Conference. So let's move into the architecture itself. And here, just a few words very quickly. Now, I think you've heard about different principles that were used. Customer centricity, I think, Karthik, you've mentioned that, and that was one of the founding, or one of the fundamental key principles that was used. Then if you click on the next one, it's generic versus specific. I think we addressed it through the discussion as well. So that's quite an important principle for us to keep in mind. Now, if you do a next click, it's designed for the future rather than making things fit past limitations. So that's about really not looking at the constraints of the today's environment, but rather looking at the aspirational view of how the future of offers and orders should look like. Then open, modular, and capability based. I think a lot was said around that as well as we went through this discussion. And last but not least, it's designed with airlines in mind, by airlines, as in putting airlines in control of their end-to-end distribution all the way through the entire transactional life cycle down to financial management and settlement. So these are the key principles, and now we will go into the actual architecture overview. So I'll hand over to Inut to start, please.
Thank you very much, Andre. Obviously, we're going to zoom in the central blue parts here on the screen today. We'll start off with customer management. And just to give a little bit of a background, so the activity or the concentration was around capability supporting offers and orders. Customer management is a capability that is core to offer and order, but is not part of offer management and order management per se. It's more of an end-to-end support capability, and you'll see here a range of business capabilities such as customer interaction, orchestration, segmentation in terms of the type of customers that you'd like to address. That would be a, let's say, a component within the offer management and offer creation process itself. We kept it standardized in terms of capabilities and wording that we use. So as much as possible, we try to stay away from the jargon used in the airline industry that we're all very familiar with, and try to keep it retailer specific or general, I'd rather say. So customer management business capabilities would allow an airline to personalize or contextualize offers at the end of the day. And it's there to orchestrate any sort of interactions that an airline would have with either its customers through any channel and any sort of touch point. We don't have time to go through each and every individual one. I would kindly ask you to refer to the documentation available on our website, and I'm sure we can provide some links and some reading materials after the webinar to support that process as well. Let's move on to the next one, which is 3 groups of capabilities: contract management, seller and channel management, and product management. These capabilities together are intended to enable an airline to manage the content, so products, and the business relationships with all of the parties involved in the distribution and the delivery of that content, right? So if we are to go a little bit in more detail, we can look at, for example, product management, airline profile. Airline profile is a capability that would allow an airline to, in a way, limit the number of shopping requests that they receive, or better said, ensure that they would receive shopping requests for the content that they are able to provide. Delivery management, you see here, delivery provider management capabilities is a catch-all. It's a catch-all. It's a simplified capability to ensure the architecture provides a place for all of the agreements an airline needs to establish to enable the delivery of services in general. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are future considerations to be taken, and there's active work being done today. So, for example, in the airline product management working group, it's a standard setting group. The relationship between schedules, the airline profile that I mentioned earlier, and the product catalog, we need to be further clarified for us as an industry to understand what type of information we need to share to which stakeholder to support which capability we want to achieve at the end of the day. If I continue with product management, if I look at the product catalog, so the product catalog, as Andrei mentioned, we have a recommended practice that was recently adopted. But the requirements powering the product catalog are mainly coming from commercial distribution. So the business reference architecture will also allow us to identify requirements coming from either the financial space, either from the operational or delivery management space, that would enable the full end-to-end product catalog capability definition, I would say. If we are to move into offer management, the next one. So offer management, with all of its sub-capabilities here, covers any scenario, including initial customer shopping, as well as creation of an offer in the context of an order change. So that would mean servicing, be it voluntary servicing or involuntary servicing. And it's supported by the orchestration of the offer, so the means to allow an airline to orchestrate the way they build their offers. And it's centered around the fact that offer management, or the concept of offer, is a central piece in the architecture. For example, the dynamic offer creation interacts with all other offer management capabilities, which we can look at them as sort of parameters in the overall offer construction process itself. Obviously, we didn't go into the details of specifying the sequence in which these capabilities need to take place, but it's more of a logically structured view of the capabilities per domain itself. What else? You could notice here that there's a separation between itinerary building and product bundling. The latter would actually involve adding ancillaries and other products and bundle the pricing to reflect the transport nature of the core business, right? At the core, we provide transport services, and then we have products and services that are connected or annexed to the main transport service. I would maybe stop here and then pass it over to Andre, but I would definitely encourage you to ask any questions. We'll be taking a look at the questions tab here on the webinar, and try and address as many as we can within the allocated time. So maybe I'll hand over to Andre to go over the order management capability next.
Yeah, thank you, Nut. So one thing to note here is, as this architecture was initially developed, the concentration was offer and order management. So those were worked out to a probably more mature level of details vis-a-vis maybe some of the other capabilities that you see here, which are more to make sure that we have an end-to-end flow, or the end-to-end end-to-end set. And it also gives us some sort of a roadmap to see where and how that we need to, or which capabilities that we may need to work on to detail them further. So again, that's why you might, as you get more into the details of it, well, probably not today, but at some point later with some of the documentation that we have available, you will notice maybe a slightly different maturity level between the different capabilities. So just keep that in mind. Now, excuse me. Now, speaking about order management, so as you see here, what it represents is a collection of sub-capabilities within the logical group of order management. And much like in some other areas, it's kind of starting out with order orchestration that is intended to make sure that there is a way of orchestrating across multiple capabilities within order management pillar, as well as with capabilities in other areas that also feed into order management. Now you have typical things here that you'd see in retailing, as far as say service status management, so that you're always so you have a capability that kind of orchestrates as to where each particular service is at and how it's being delivered. What is the status? That's quite key, because that's something that would be required, that not only on the delivery side, but then obviously on the financial side and in many other areas. Eligibility management from a customer perspective, as in who is eligible for what kind of orders to be created in terms of entitlements that different customer groups or different customers may have, which in turn would be a capability that you'd expect to be interfacing with both contract management on the customer side, as well as product management that would also get involved, or some of the capabilities within product management that would get involved in making sure that the orders are placed based on what customer is eligible for. Quite straightforward, I suppose, is payment orchestration, which clearly has to be in place in order to manage your order. And that ties in together with availability of commitment to pay that has to be maintained as a capability within order management to make sure that once there is a commitment to pay, then it actually is maintained in good standing all the way through the order life cycle. And if it's not, then what are the actions that may need to be invoked? For example, on financial management, we were looking at capability to orchestrate stop or suspend delivery, which may be a result of non-availability of commitment to pay or non-continuous availability of commitment to pay. We're looking at other items here, order integrity management, which is also quite key in making sure that your order continues to be valid in terms of different, for example, service items or order items that may or may not be combined together in case of any sort of disruption management or any sort of other changes that may or may not work with one another, where this integrity has to be maintained. Service, sale, and delivery recognition, that's another quite key capability that also links up with what we have in financial management, because that plays quite an important role in revenue recognition and cost accrual, which actually happens on the financial side, but is managed in conjunction or in coordination with service, sale, and delivery recognition as a part of order management. So again, admissibility management, which relates to the customer ability to travel, having all the paperwork in order, for example, and so on. So that kind of goes into making sure that not only that your customer is eligible, but it's also your customer is admitted to travel. So all these capabilities are collected under one umbrella of order management. Now, if you get onto the next slide, just get into delivery management. That subset of capabilities, or that capabilities grouping, is probably a little less worked through and a little less mature than maybe some other areas that you've seen. Now, this is the work that is only starting. We're starting to look at delivery in a more intense way to within the order framework, because obviously on the legacy side, I think most of it is quite nicely worked out with whatever shortcomings that we have, which are linked to some of the legacy artifacts that we have to work with. But here we're looking at departure processing, for example, baggage acceptance and processing. Now, there are some capabilities which don't directly relate to distribution, but which group felt should be important to identify, because these are essential capabilities for the airline to maintain its delivery in a proper way. So we're talking about, for example, weight and balance or ground support, and some which are more of commercial nature, which weren't necessarily included in the initial views of end-to-end management. For example, in-flight services or lounges, which the groups that worked on this decided to port into their own self-contained, if you wish, capabilities, recognizing the importance of these pieces in the end-to-end flow. Now, if we get onto the next slide, we're looking at financial management. As you see here, I think I did mention a bit earlier that it's kind of looking at generalizing financial management. We're looking at customer order accounting, which essentially relates to your more or less standard P2P or procure to OTC, the order to cash process, and partners order accounting, which could technically represent order to cash or procure to pay. But here the group felt that we should look at it more from a procure to pay. But then, you know, it would kind of go on both sides of the equation, because in certain cases you would be a retailer to somebody else's service, but in certain cases you would act as a supplier to somebody else who is retailing your services. I'm referring obviously to airline scenarios, but nonetheless, those are the two top pillars that were that the group had decided to kind of put on the map here. Revenue recognition and general accounting. So that's a top level capability that relates more to general accounting practices and the way that or rather capabilities are required to recognize revenue or accrue costs, depending on the side of the equation you're in or on. Now, specifically for these three top pillars, this is the capabilities that were detailed a lot higher granularity with our financial advisory console. But again, it's not yet in the standards domain, but documentation around it is available. We published a paper in the beginning of this year, which details sub capabilities that are included in this top level ones. And then we have more generic corporate financial and accounting set of capabilities here around corporate finance, enterprise performance management, and clearly tax management. Now, these aren't generally going to be affected all that dramatically, because we see that most of the changes or transformation in financial management is going to be around customer order accounting and partners order accounting, whereas the rest of the capabilities will likely to benefit from improvements and maybe more granular and quicker access to data by themselves, by nature, already being relatively generic financial capabilities. Then the impact or the implications are going to be smaller. Now, if we get onto the next slide, yeah, we have a few capabilities that were identified as a part of disruption management. Now, looking at orchestration, notification management, reaccommodation, solution or disruption solution optimization, and disruption recognition. Now, this is also area which today is a little less developed than maybe some other areas. So there is more work that is needed here. The general idea, though, with disruption management is being as key in the airline business as it is. It was called out as a separate subset or as a separate grouping of capabilities. But the idea would be to look at it in a more general or standard way, so that your disruption management should follow the same offer order management process, where any sort of disruption is managed through potentially sort of like a technical reshop, and then it feeds into order management and updating order framework, as opposed to being a side process that is not connected. And this links up to one of the questions that I think I saw that was pre-submitted to this webinar, is order integrity, and making sure that order is the single source of truth, and that any changes are managed only within the order. And yes, it's not a part of reference or capabilities mapping as you see it here, but it certainly is a part of supporting documentation, and it's also certainly a part of one of the key underlining design principles that we operate with, both on standard setting side and then I think on the consortium side as well, where order is the single source of truth, and any changes that have to be managed, they have to go through the same shop order process, and that's where Inut is working hard around the clock to coordinate with his standard setting group as a secretary of shop order pay board. So disruption management, so we talked about that. Now there is one last pillar, that is identity resolution, that kind of goes across all of the capabilities, because identity is used all across. So I think we talked about identity management at the top of the meeting as one of the higher level streams, if you wish, or value streams within the MAR house or within the MAR overall scope. So this is what we have for today. I think, well, obviously, given the time constraints, we stayed at a much higher level than we could have if we had to present it in greater detail. But there's a lot of materials that are available around it. There's materials that are available as a part of our standard setting, but then there's also a lot of supporting material that is available as an overall part of MAR educational artifacts. Some of the materials available as published from consortium. So I would really encourage you to have a look to get into maybe more details around it. And I believe that this is also the first webinar in a series on reference architecture. So we'll continue with it. Next one, we're planning to zoom in onto financial management. And then there will be probably other episodes as well, where we would try to get into maybe more details than time had permitted us to get into today. Before we get into, yeah, there are a few questions that I noted in the chat. I mean, we won't be able to address all of them, but maybe just a few questions, and then hopefully we'll be able to address more questions as we get into other episodes. And one question, and I think I'll call on Inut on this question, is is IATA working on a business scenario or use case to demonstrate how this business architecture works? Before you answer, Nut, I just wanted to qualify it. It's not IATA working on it. It's the industry working on it as a part of standard setting, but please.
Yes, no, thank you, Andre. Yes, the short answer is yes, together with the industry. I've referenced that end-to-end scenario earlier, and the idea behind it is to literally reference the capabilities outlined in the business reference architecture, and which one of them power which part of the particular use cases or flavors of that scenario that we would be looking at. So, starting with value stream mapping for internal or external stakeholders to a lot more detailed use. So yeah, stay tuned. And if you would like to take part of it, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, thank you, Nut. There is another question that I think we still have a bit of time to address. Is the question is whether this reference architecture was based on the end state, or whether it in any shape or form accounted for transition from the legacy environment or tickets PNRs based environment into offers and orders. Now, maybe Karthik, I'll let you maybe answer this one as.
Yep, sure. I mean, the reference architecture is really based on the end state. And there is already a transition architecture or the transition pathway document available from the consortium, which also shows potential pathways for airline transition.
Thank you. And another question, maybe Najmi, for you is actually there were quite a few questions around it. Is where can people get more details on reference architecture? So maybe you just talk about ATSB and airline industry data model, just to give everybody a quick view of what we have there.
Yes, so we have the consistent practice of maintaining the industry agreed vocabulary and data definitions and their relationships in the airline industry data model. So that actually the source of all the standards which published in the agreed technology. So the home to the reference architecture is also into the same airline data model, and that is the base of that. And if any revisions required based upon the agreed vocabulary and the definition, so that is something which comes under the preview of ATSB release cycle. I hope I have answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and just from my side, to conclude, I should probably mention that obviously all of you would receive a copy of this presentation and this webinar today, and I think we'll also coordinate to include some of the links to some of the materials that we mentioned here today, whether those are produced by consortium or something that is maintained under the industry side of things. In addition to, Najmi, what you've mentioned as a part of ATSB and aviation industry data model agenda. So thank you very much. And guys, thank you so much for supporting it with your inputs. And thank you very much to all of those who found some time to attend today. Hope you found it useful. And I hope to see you on the next episodes as we continue on this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.